because of your title, because of your words linger and your actions linger in a room long after you leave. So helping people understand how you came to a decision, the why behind the decision, is more important culturally than the decision itself.
Hey, my name is Amol Nirgudkar. I'm here with AJ Peak, my co-host, and we want to welcome you to Healthcare 100, the ultimate playbook for scaling healthcare. Each week, we sit down with operators, investors, innovators, and the fastest growing DSOs and MSOs across healthcare, and really ask them questions on strategies, systems, capital structures, anything that drives real growth. And then we end the whole podcast with a big $100,000 idea that could be implemented right away to drive immediate growth. With that in mind, I'll have AJ kind of kick this off. We have a very distinguished panel of guests today. So AJ, go ahead.
So I'm going to ask you all the same question, and kind of before you answer, giving the audience just a brief background on yourself, and then you can expand on the question. So the question for all three of you, and we'll start with Steve, is imagine you're on a board of one of these emerging dental groups, 25, 50 locations, and you're sort of giving sage advice to that founder or CEO. Kind of what are the three fundamentals you got to get right to scale the culture of the organization?
So I think first you asked for background. So I'm Steve Bilt, is the founder of Smile Brands. It's run by a couple different names. Back in the day, we called it Bright Now Dental back in 1998 when we founded it. And we've grown to be one of the larger dental groups in the country, been through all the trials and tribulations of the sector, which I'm happy to share over a lot of years. I would say the number one thing is, as an entrepreneur, you founded your business with a real dream or a premise in mind. That's what got you started. That's the spark that's taken you this far. Never lose sight of that. And I think about that when I look at Pat. Rick and Pat have been doing Heartland since the beginning. That founding principle of making life better for doctors, you never lose it. Mary, I know you're a doctor yourself. You had your rationale, which you'll explain, for founding it. That will carry you all the way to heights that, as Pat can describe, which are much bigger than us. And it's the same for Smile Brands. We started this to make life easier for doctors. We started this to make life easier for patients. We started it with this win-win principle in mind that we call Smiles for Everyone. And every time we drift away from that win-win principle in everything we do, it's painful and we have to redirect our way back to it. And then we get back on track again. And unfortunately, it happens over and over again. But the through line is, what was that founding principle? Yes, the world changes. Yes, it takes innovation to deliver on that founding principle. But it's that founding principle that never goes away. And when outsiders come in, when you build your team, they have other ideas, they sound appealing, and you lose that original through line, you suffer for it.
I'm Mary Pham, and I'm the CEO and founder of Lollipop Dental out here in Orange County, California. A little bit about our group is we're pedo, ortho, oral surgery. We have been recognized as one of the fastest growing group by Inc. magazine 5 years in a row. And we really pride ourselves in specialty care and really holding ourselves to the highest standard in specialty care. So from pedo to ortho and oral surgery. So we only hire specialists and we only hire the best. And I think going back, to kind of piggyback off of Steve, I completely agree. Is, making sure that you decide who you want as part of your team and what qualities are the most important. And for me, it's quality of care, customer service, and determining what patient population you want to serve and doing it really, really well and really honing in on them. I think it's easy in the DSO space to kind of see what everybody else is doing and thinking that you want to venture into that. But I think for us, our secret sauce and what really makes us really special is just really effectively optimizing the way that we serve our patients. Every time a patient isn't happy or has a grievance, we really take each one of those into consideration and we change it. Because if one patient was affected, that's one too many, right? And so I think that for us is really important. Doing pediatric dentistry and orthodontists really well, and then making sure that our team understands that expectation.
Um, Thank you. It's really an honor to be with you guys. They're very cool people. Um, so Heartland Dental, I've been in dental for, gosh, 30, almost 40 years now, and with Heartland for 28, and started when there was 8 practices. So the beginning is really all about alignment. Well, it's going to not be far from what these guys have already said because they're really smart. But it's alignment for me. We knew right away. So we didn't. Our comp model is aligned. We don't make any more money until a doctor makes more money. Our mission is very clear. Our customer is a doctor. And all we do is support them and their team so they can, basically produce the highest quality dental care and experiences to the communities they serve. So we're very clear about what we do, which is we support doctors. So they're my customer. Patient isn't my customer. I have to understand them. For my customer, I have to be really on top of that customer. But it really comes back to what Steve said and what Mary said. You have to be consistent. Everybody's testing whether you're consistent or not. And so all along, if the doctors feel like they're not getting a win-win, as Steve said, they're going to leave. They have alternatives. This is a great industry. And so first is do you have a clear vision, mission, core values? Are you aligned with your customer, the doctor who you're supporting? And can you keep that consistent? And if you're not, then you're in big trouble because then you have to say, okay, well, then do I have the right team that will support them? And if you're small, I remember when we had 25 or 50 offices, I knew every doctor. I knew them by name. I knew their phone numbers without looking it up. This is before speed dial. That's how old I am. Cell phones might have been this big when I started, but you know them and you know how to help them. So if you can't help a doctor be successful, I don't know what you're doing in this business because that's where it all starts. You have to help a doctor by listening to them and getting them what they need to take care of their customer. And so that all starts with that alignment, that vision and mission of here's who we are, here's what we do, and not wavering from that over the years. And we've been fortunate. We've been here a long time and been consistent, and that helps a lot. You don't have in and outgoing people, and all 3 of us have been there from the beginning. So pretty cool.
Wish I had this advice before. Um, Steve, I'm curious, starting with you, a lot's changed and you've seen different trends and cycles in the dental industry. And I think we can all agree the last 3 years have been pretty unique. And could you speak to some of the challenges that are maybe different now of scaling and retaining your culture and what you're trying to think about to get right today that maybe wasn't as big of an emphasis or concern 10 years ago?
Yeah, it's a layered question, obviously, AJ. So it's interesting to think about. And Pat, something you said is very consistent with where we started. When we had 45 offices and I was essentially the COO and the president and the CEO, there were 45 lead doctors and I had a personal relationship with each of them. And I would say, look, I understand you may not stay here forever, but I'm going to fight for what you tell me you want. So don't go embarrassing me when I'm in a room fighting for you. And then someone kind of goes, oh boy, and they're looking down at their page. And I say, what's going on? I said, oh, Dr. So-and-so already gave notice. That would embarrass me. Just don't do that. So call me first. Let me know. You can go. I understand, but don't embarrass me. That took our turnover down to levels we've never been able to re-achieve because there was this personal relationship. So AJ, to go to your question, remember I said the through line in the first answer, what's the through line? If the through line is relationships, and that's what I heard in, Pat's answer just now, big time. I heard it Mary's as well, relationships. You have to do different things to make sure you establish and maintain those relationships in a different era, right? So we can't just memorize phone numbers like we did in the old days, Pat. We have to be okay at texting and we have to be okay at video messaging and we have to be okay at talking to a bigger group other ways. But the core of what we're going for is that relationship and that personalization of the business between us and our key constituents, right? Starting with the doctor, working through the entire team. And so A lot has changed, AJ. You mentioned the last 3 years, which has been dog years for all of us, I think, in terms of trying to understand how people have changed and what's different and what stimulus has done to the economy and. But if I peel it back to how am I enhancing the relationship with my provider? How am I enhancing the relationship with my team that is the one taking care of the ultimate customer, the patient? That's the challenge, is to see through it all. You want, digital AI, radiography, great. Does that enhance the relationship? Does it get in the way of the relationship? You want to do implant training. Is that enhancing the relationship? Is that getting in the way of the relationship, in the way you're doing it? So it goes back to this win-win concept. And then the bigger challenge, the bigger you get, is you're often working through other people. And one of the biggest challenges there, goes to your question, is I can say things very clearly like, do anything to achieve the win win relationship. Now, what I mean by that is do anything, but that might mean someone says, I need you to pay me 100% of revenue. And you go, well, we're going to achieve this win win relationship another way. It's with a different person, sadly, because this person doesn't want a win win relationship. It's hard when you have to translate the nuance of a counterparty who's also willing to achieve that win-win. And some people, you have to show it first before they can trust. Others trust you coming out of the gate. So it's the nuance that you're trying to translate as you grow that becomes a bigger challenge. The nuance of how to create that relationship in an era where the inputs are different for people. Do millennials want to work less than, the generation before? No, probably not. It's just the era they came up in, who's speaking to them, what they're hearing from the outside, what economic cycles they've ever lived in. Like, I started my career in an economic down cycle. It makes me different than someone who spent the first 10 years of their career in a boom cycle. It just does. That's okay. It's not good or bad. It just is. And you just have to understand the perspectives are different. You're still fighting to achieve the relationship. This is just noise that's in the way of achieving it.
Mary, any unique challenges the last few years that your organization's sort of overcoming or continuing to battle in terms of scaling your culture or organization?
I think I'm in the baby phases of what Steve just mentioned. So I still have relationships with all of my doctors, and we're at that size where now I know I have to take it all in because, as you grow, even from when I had one location to now eight, I've, as much as I want to touch base with my team and my doctors, I am a little bit more removed, and it's good that they can be self-sufficient without me being there all the time, but yeah, I think it's important, as Steve mentioned, just to continue that relationship, and I think the way that we do that is different, right? Like, everyone has their own style. Like, I like to take my doctors and their spouse to dinner to know a little bit more about their family and their dynamic at home, and it just makes me more informed on how to approach this doctor with their depending on their personal circumstances. And so, but I think to answer your question, the biggest challenge I think that I have as I'm scaling is just going through those changes and understanding, what it is that team members value, what doctors value. And I think some of it's time, some of it's money, some of it's that relationship and that mentorship. And I think you just have to be adaptable and agile to whatever everyone's needs are to the best of your ability, as long as they really believe in the core values and the mission and the vision that you're doing. But, I have a couple team members that work 2 days a month, some doctors that work just fill in because they don't want to commit to that type of schedule. And if they're a great doctor and I know how they are or they're a great team member, then so much more accommodating to what their needs are, and it ends up being a win-win for both of us.
Pat, anything, unique challenges given, continue to get larger and larger and macroeconomic events that, is causing you guys to do something different or try to overcome?
I was thinking what Steve said. I always, there's always problems. So you're going to have 100 problems a day. I talk about it a lot, but there's 100 problems a day. So you're going to have 100 problems. You have to understand the external environment, how it changes, and certainly with the interest rates and inflation, that all became another problem that we had to deal with. But fundamentally, you're still supporting a doctor in their practice. And so as we grew, Rick was the one that had all the relationships. And then I came in and I didn't do it quite the way he did it. And now I know whoever's next for me, they don't do it exactly the way that I do it, but that's okay. As long as they understand the mission, vision, and core values, and they understand that this is what we expect. And so you're going to have problems. You have to deal with them, and you have to understand the internal environment. You really have to study it. You have to know, okay, how is this going to affect us? But there's so many positive changes. Medicare Advantage. I mean, this is a massive boom for dental. And it's just unlocked so many things for us that we didn't have 3 years ago, that we didn't know about it. And so there's some positive changes too that allow us to grow. AI, oh my God. I mean, the changes are so positive for us. And today I'm thinking about what? Look at how much we know, how much they treatment plan, how much doctors do. How can those conversations are really so amazing? Say, hey, what do you think of this? I mean, this is your clinical philosophy, not mine. What do you think about that? And so it just gets people jazzed up about the opportunity that we have and how it's going to change Curadoc. When I didn't even know it existed 2 years ago. And now, I mean, we're saving people's teeth from ever having to have a drill. These are massive positive changes, even though there's negatives with the interest rates. And I got to make sure I have plenty of money and cash and inflation. I got to make sure nobody increases my fees, even though they want to. And there's a lot of stuff that I have to deal with. But fundamentally, it's still about how to help that doctor with the customer that they have so they can be the best in their community that they serve. And so even though we have all this stuff, I have to try and keep our team with like the relationships, Steve and Mary saying, going to dinner with the spouses, And so as we get big, we have to stay small. And that's not easy. And that's the constant challenge.
That's an interesting point. As you get big, you have to stay small. It's hard to maintain that mindset as you scale. The question I talk to lots of you guys all the time, and part of what I see the struggle is as groups start to scale is the relationships with the doctors and the change management piece associated with all these bright, shiny things that are coming our way. I think that's what you call them at your event. There's bright, shiny objects shining from everywhere. There's AI. Ooh, that's wonderful. Now there is this thing, there's this machine or that idea. And what I've seen across the board is initiatives, these cool, sexy initiatives are just not moving the needle on the P&L and not moving it. And one of the challenges is how do you get everybody to drink the Kool-Aid and get them to believe in what you believe, what the best practices are, and how do you get that alignment on the clinical side at scale so that people are believing in the vision of, well, computer vision is going to diagnose so much treatment, and this is how we do it. It's what I see that CEOs are struggling with a lot, is getting doctors on board with calibrating with the philosophy that is the new philosophy, whatever that might be. So how do you guys do this at like this enormous scale? I know it's difficult, but any thoughts on kind of getting that right in the beginning? Steve?
I'm going to learn from Pat first because he's got more right than I do.
Well, it's interesting because I was looking at the questions. Heartland doesn't have a clinical philosophy. So that's the first thing. So that's a big point. We don't have a clinical philosophy. Our doctors do. Our supported doctors do. So I don't have a clinical philosophy. I can give you my opinion, but I'm not a dentist. So you can just say, what the hell you know? I don't know anything. But what I do know is I can talk to the doctors and ask them what their clinical philosophy is. And I can respect them as providers to say, what do you think we should be doing? You tell me what this AI is all about, why you wouldn't want to use it. Tell me, again, I can't tell you to use it, but we think that it's going to make a difference. And we test things. So we have a whole group of doctors. I don't make a decision on any clinical product, none, zero. But our doctors do. And then I have a whole team that looks at it, tests it. When we decided to use iTero scanners, it was between 3Shape and iTero. And I kept saying, you mean they're not ready yet? They're not ready yet. Okay. I mean, I can't force it before it's ready. So then they said, okay, Pat, finally, it's ready. These two are the ones that we work with. So then we went and negotiated and said, okay, what's the return on the business side? Because now we have the clinical side that has accepted it. So now how do we best say, okay, what's the best deal we can get? And what is the best return? Well, we picked arterial because we can do Invisalign and it stops, it scales for lab work. So it paid back quickly. And so then the docs go, you mean I can have this? Yeah, now you can have it. And now your dentistry is just elevated. Same thing with AI. I didn't pick which AI. They tested them. Some didn't get a chance because they didn't treat us right. Once we tested them, then, Vidya was asking us, hey, what do you guys want? What do you guys want? 5 years before we picked it. So I don't have a clinical philosophy. I have doctors, and then the doctors can decide if they use it or don't use it. Now, I get to ask a lot of questions. It's my right to ask questions, to say, why is that? Tell me more about that. What's the research? When we did Chiradon, I told Rick, Dr. Workman, I said, hey, what do you think this is that product? He goes, well, that's not possible. I'm like, well, they have the clinical research on it, and here's what it says. You're kidding me. That can work. So then our doctors tested it. Then they saw it. Then it saw that it worked. Then we can say, hey, this is what our results were. So it's what I've found in my experience. Doctors are smart. They're all scientists. So they all are smart enough that if I give them data, I got them. Because it's just data. They can't argue with data because if it was emotional. It's not emotional for me. It's how do I help you take care of your customer? This is what this is saying. Oh, and they start going, well, that's not what I believe. So let me do some more research. Now they self-discover. So now it's not me just saying, you've got to use this iTero. Rick thought we were crazy. We had fun with it. We said, let's see who can scan the fastest. And we had a scan-a-thon on our stage to see who can be the fastest scanner. He goes, well, that doesn't help people scan. I'm like, Rick, we gamify it. They love it. I got winners up at the top because, it was fun and they started using it. So there's certain things we can nudge, we can help, but in the end, it has to work for the doctor. And all I try to do is say, okay, tell me why it doesn't work. And they'll tell me. There's diagnostics. PDS uses, my doctors haven't figured, they're testing it. It's not working. It doesn't work for them. So I can't implement it. Even though Steve's implemented in his whole company, I can't figure it out yet. So I have to wait for my doctors to say, it's okay. It works. Okay, now we can go. But right now, I don't have the evidence and confidence to get to my doctors. So until I have the evidence and confidence, then I can't go to my doctors and say, look, Invisalign, we're way up. You know why? Because our doctors know it's about function. It's not about just the smile. It's about function. And function makes dentistry last longer. And so it's not, we didn't jump up in Invisalign because we said, hey, we want to make everybody smile right. We wanted to talk about function because that's what was important to our doctors, not Pat Bauer, not Heartland. And so once they got that, it's about function. So we can get the team to do right. Well, shit, now my dentistry lasts longer. I don't have these people bumming out because they're still breaking down. So he's like, there. But you know what I mean? I'll let you guys split it out. I could keep talking, but.
What Pat's talking about, I agree with completely, right? So our dental groups might have a philosophy on what they'd like to do. They might have a standard of care they'd like to achieve. So I agree there with Pat's saying. What I'd add to it, to go to the point of your question a little bit, another point in your question, Amol, which is, why doesn't this stuff work sometimes? What happens is, in my world, it's relatively easy, if you allow for the time that Pat was describing, for the scientists to say, this is our preferred product. It's our preferred implant or our preferred clear aligner. What often happens then is to say, hallelujah, that's the best dentistry. The clinicians are driving it. We're set. And lose out on all the other things that surround a service actually taking place. And what we lose sight of when you're sitting in a conference room and you say, well, and you guys have all heard this one, did you know if we only add one more procedure a day, our profitability jumps by this much? Like, thank you very much. Yes, I knew that. And yes, I know how to use Excel. Have you ever been to a dental office where there's 15 people in the waiting room and somebody's complaining that they just walked in 40 minutes late for their appointment and you're not seeing them immediately? And mom wants to be in the back with the child and tell you exactly what dentistry you're supposed to do. And 2 of your staff didn't show up today. And I can go on and on, right? Now, do you think you can get your schedule met, let alone one more procedure? So understanding the chaos of a dental office and what happens there, I think is really important to implementation for something to stick. Then the other is sometimes you implement these things and they actually change the demand on the dental office. So, for example, you treat all PPO patients, and all you have to know how to do is how to explain their insurance to them, how to collect a copay. Now you move to clear aligner therapy, and perhaps it's not covered. And now the question becomes, well, how do I explain that to the patient? The patient needs financing support for that, and their credit score is 575. Okay, all of a sudden, a lot of stuff has happened that changed your ability to get from, yes, I like this clinically, to this patient's getting this procedure done. And it's very easy in a conference room to ignore the chaos of a dental office or the new conditions that show up to get something completed. And I say that, and we all go, yeah, of course. And then you watch these initiatives, they fail all the time for those exact reasons. They look a little different, they wear a little different outfit, but they are the same core reason. You're not following through the business side of how to get this to actually work in the chaos of the environment. And that could be everything from, is that image embedded? Or, do you have to go to a separate system to look at it? That could be, do I need financing? Do I need financing for subprime credit? Is the insurance company going to tell them that should have been covered, even though that's not really a code for that? That could go on and on. But those are the things that show up that we don't go back to often enough after the launch and figure out the why.
Mary, one of the things you do well, you're in a very competitive space, competitive geographic area. You don't do any advertising, and you attract all these patients and the best of the patients in your community, and you attract all these people to come work for you guys, doctors. Everybody wants to work for Lollipop. It's this incredible environment you've created in the local community and this engine that you created that drives patients and doctors to your offices. Is what advice can you give people, groups similar to you, to create that same foundation? That, oh my God, I'm so excited about joining this group. I'm so excited about seeing. I mean, I've met patients randomly, kids at airports saying, "Oh, we love Lollipop." Like randomly when I asked them who the dentist is, they're like, "Oh, we love Lollipop." What is that secret?
It's interesting that you shared that story because I was on the plane one time wearing my Lollipop hat, and then one of the patients saw me, and it is really special, just to be in my local community and feeling like that you make that much of a difference. Like, they're just excited. I'm not, sometimes I'm not sure if I've seen them or a member of my team, but I hear this story all the time. So thank you for sharing that. But going back to your question, I feel like, as I'm thinking through what is it that we really do, is I think just being authentic, being who you are, taking great care of the team, taking great care of the doctors and the patients in the way that you would take care of your family, and I think that any type of decision you make, whether it's implementing technology or a new procedure or a new service, you have to make sure that that service, AI, you know, procedure that you're implementing not only helps grow your business, right? But also makes it a better experience for everyone. So I'll just use Patient Prism as an example, that, we get so many calls every single day, and it helps our front office support team really get better at answering the phone, answering questions. And it takes a lot less effort from our in-office team, to really be great at phones. And then, when it comes to doctors, we'll implement different scanners, in-house lab, because we didn't want the turnaround time. So now we have our own lab to do all of that. So I think it's just catering to the patient as much as you can and shortening that time to deliver the product or the service that you provide, and making sure that you exceed their expectations. So not just meet it. I mean, we have 5-star reviews from patients all the time, so they're coming in expecting 5-star. So if I have 2 call outs that day, I'm going to get my scrubs on and go there because I want to make sure that nobody waits too long, So it's just what we do, right? And I think we're small enough where we can kind of move people around, and we have a couple extra people ready to go in case people call in or aren't available to work. And so I think that's the beauty of still having a mid-sized DSO is you have a little bit more flexibility with that. And then things that we implement just move real quick. It just moves quicker because there's not a lot of hoops to jump through. It's just, I like it. I'm a doctor. Show the doctors the data and say, we're going to try it. And then we all do it. And it's that mutual respect too between the team and the doctors and myself that we all have the same, goal top of mind. So
Pat, I'm curious, and a question for all of you. If you were coaching a founder with multiple locations, multi-state, and maybe studied their calendar for 90 days, and it's probably just so obvious to you that you don't even think it's new news to that CEO, and you're looking at their calendar. What are the things you'd want to see every month, every quarter that CEO is doing to drive engagement, the culture, and they're in a one-to-many environment, no longer able to go to every location, multiple places. What are the things that may be so obvious to you because you've been doing it well at scale, but not so obvious if you're a new founder? All these locations, you got 100 problems. What are those things you'd want to see?
Well, first, what's their engagement with their team? From in other words, CFO, CHRO, all the different departments. What's their engagement with them? Are they having regular discussions? Are they making sure that they're all aligned? So that's the first thing. How often you meet with your team, not only there, but one-on-one, so that they're clear on what the objectives are. Then I want to see how are they engaging our customer? How often do they see them? Do they have something planned where they're actually talking to the people that are generating revenue? Do they understand what it is? And so for them, it's really, okay, I know you have all these requirements from PE people and wherever your banks are, and you have all that, but really, what are you spending your time on with the customers that you need to spend time with? People say, oh, my customers are my favorite. People are the most important thing, yet they have nothing on their calendar that talks about how you're getting out to people to understand. So that's probably the biggest thing is how often are you actually going to a practice, listening to what they're doing? You want 50, can't get to all of them, but you can get to some every week to see what's really happening. Because when you're that small, you should be in practices. Look, I'm doing it. I've done every job but a dentist and a hygienist. Every job. Not well, but I've done every job. And so being in a dental practice, understanding it and working the phones and listening, doing a case acceptor, a case presentation, really understanding it. If you sit in a Taj Mahal saying, I don't do those things, I have people who do those things, you're just not going to, you're not going to have a lot of followership.
Any rituals that you do? Any rituals that you do? Like every month, this is what I do.
Now every month I have a team meeting, and a weekly team meeting, but then I have once a month, I have 2 days offsite every month where we talk about deeper topics. So every month we're together for at least 2 days and we're talking about deeper topics. Every quarter we're doing team building because we have dysfunctions just like everybody else. And so we use the Lencioni model, 5 dysfunctions in a team, because the only thing that stands in our way is people and not being aligned. And so every Tuesday we have an all executive meeting. So everybody who's an executive gives an update for 2-3 minutes on what they're working on this week. So now everybody in the company knows what they're working on. Say, wait, I was working on that. So now they all know. It takes about an hour and a half. It's hard sometimes because you have to really listen. But that's where I know. And so we have rituals on which practices are we going to affiliate with, which one we're going to build. So we have that figured out. But it's really about what are you spending time on people? How many interviews are you doing? How many are you really talking to people about why they're unhappy? I had a doctor today. We made a slight change, might not have handled it properly. And her email basically said, I feel like an owner here. So as soon as I feel like an employee, I'm leaving. That's important information. So I don't want people to feel like employees. I want them to feel, and they can own in Heartland, but she feels like an owner. If I don't feel like that, I'm going to leave. So how are we making sure our RMOs, our regional directors, our regional managers are really understanding the ownership model? So it's those kind of things.
Steve, anything you would add?
Well, I agree with all that. I think there's some ways to go about it. So, as you become an executive, quote unquote, versus an owner, or however you're thinking about yourself before, and you do find yourself in that position Pat was talking about, where you're talking to the board a lot or talking to outside constituents. One thing is just to inventory what you're talking to them about, and then ask yourself how often you're doing that. Oh, we have, doctors are our number one relationship, and we introduce new procedures. And okay, great, you're talking about those things. Now go back in your calendar and audit yourself 30 days. How much are you doing? And one of the things I've talked about before is cultural archeology. So you know where the say-do gap is by looking back. Like an archaeologist figures out societies based on what they leave behind. Your calendar is a perfect example of something you leave behind. So just look back and say, how much time did I actually spend? Okay, that's your actual culture, not the one you espouse. That's your value in action. So that's a big one. And you can run from it from a little while and explain the exception that this month was or the exception that that month was. But at some point you look back at a quarter and you go, that's not the exception, fellow. That's the rule. Right. And so that's one. Like it's that say-do gap. The cultural archaeology, I think, is important. And then I think the other is you are making a transition, and there's the think about the role of president versus the role of a Supreme Court justice. In theory, a president's taking action, leading, doing. A Supreme Court justice is setting precedent. So everything that Supreme Court decision is not, do I believe this person was guilty or not? It's just, do I believe everyone has a right to have their rights read to them? And unfortunately, someone gets turned loose that I might have believed was, I'll send it back for a trial, but the fact they weren't read their rights might be. So that becomes an issue as you get bigger. It's your words, because of your title, because of your words linger and your actions linger in a room long after you leave. So helping people understand how you came to a decision, the why behind the decision, is more important culturally than the decision itself. And that's hard when you're a person of action and you're entrepreneurial and you want to get something done and move to the next thing. So I'd say the archaeology, and then just the fact that you are a precedent setter because of your new role in this organization. And just know that. Just know that. It may not change the decision. It may change a lot about how much of the opinion, quote unquote, you write out for people to understand, if you go back to the Supreme Court concept.
What is if I were to ask you, if you go back to your old days when you started the business, you were under 50 offices or under 100 offices, let's say at the time, what is something that you would do over again that, oh my God, I can't believe I did that? And something that you could give somebody in that shoe, like, I can't believe I didn't think about that. Now it's just intuitive, it's second nature, but at the time you didn't know it.
It probably has to do with those things that, were differentiators for us at the time. And then try to think ahead and actually codify, not just thinking ahead. I think as an entrepreneur, you carry a lot in your head. And it's hard for an organization to take action based on things you're carrying in your head. So, we have alignment with our providers. We have to challenge that every time we come together, whether that's the quarterly, team building event, whether that's the monthly. Are we going closer to our providers or further away from our providers? And I think that's true of every element of the model that's working. Is you have to first and foremost challenge those things that are working to make sure they keep working. And it's kind of easy, as Pat mentioned, there's 100 problems every day. There sure is on a good day, right? So you go, okay, there's a lot to deal with. How do you make yourself focus on the things that are working, the birds that aren't chirping, right? And say, how do I make sure this keeps working? Because by the way, if it stops, I have much bigger problems than these existing issues. And I think that's probably the biggest thing is just, we had a great doctor relationship model. Is it as great as it was? Have we had to fight to get it back because we let it drift a little bit? And again, it might be different tools that keep it close, right? So Mary might say, I can go out to dinner with my doc and their spouse, once a quarter. That keeps us all close. Great. You know, get to 500 or 1,000 practices. It's a lot of dinner, right? So, I joke like, look, if I went to one of our dental offices every day, takes me over 3 years to get to all of them. Pat, takes you more time than that by a lot, right? So you can't do it. You can't be that I'm in every office, I have every relationship. So you're the Supreme Court justice. That doesn't mean going to some dental offices isn't important because it keeps you sharp. But then how do I create that force multiplier through my organization to get the stuff that did work early to keep working well, right? That's harder. So for example, to go very specifically, it might have been enough back in the day when we had the 45 offices I was talking about that I just had a personal relationship with every doctor. That might have been enough. Now it might be like, I'm not going to have it and I can't delegate it per se because no one else is the CEO founder. So maybe I need a different economic alignment model that's more clear to help that happen. Just as a simple example.
Pat, anything you could do over in the first early years of Heartland?
Well, I had this question before. I would have recruited better. So I was the recruiter. Wasn't that good at it. But I would have had a better recruiting system. I would have had better HR system. I think I took that stuff for granted. I didn't listen to anything the finance people were saying anyway, because it didn't really bother me about that much because I was working on helping doctors. But the HR thing, I think if I would have done that better, we were doing affiliations, and then we started doing de novos, and I got ahead of myself on my recruiting, and I couldn't recruit as fast as so that I probably would have been better at that system. I just didn't have the chops for that or whatever the right word is, but I just didn't plan that well enough in early ages. Because if I would have, then I would probably been done more de novos earlier, but I had to slow down, do more affiliations, which in the end gave us the ability to do both at scale. But at that time, it kicked my ass. So that I didn't have it. So
The recruiting kicks everybody, I think, no matter what time it is.
One of the premises we've always had when Amol and I had the idea of the show is to give founders, entrepreneurs something tactical they can go do in 6 months. Not that any of us have ever had that task to drive EBITDA value kind of here and now. And sort of in this type of a culture, and I'll start with you, Mary, because in 5,000 fastest growing companies 5 times in a row, like what can they go do to replicate that on the cultural front in the next 6 months?
I think just surrounding yourself with people that you want to be like or that you can learn from. Every time I'm around all of you guys, I take a little nugget with me and I try to be a little bit more like Pat, Steve, and Amol and AJ, right? And so I think that part of it really, I think is easy to do, like to just go up to people and ask them, what advice do they have for someone like you? And everyone's going to give you something different and everyone's going to execute differently, right? And so I think that just staying focused, staying motivated, surrounding yourself with people who inspire you. And then just like anytime we go to a conference, we have a gajillion things we've written down, but as much as we want to implement everything that we took in, we can't. We have to prioritize it based on where our organization is today. And so I think that kind of drives Lollipop Dental is I look at what we're doing really well. I make sure that I have the people in place to really hold the team accountable to keeping that excellence. And then whatever issues that come along our way, I really try to pick people's brain that have solved it and then taking all of that information and then just implementing one project at a time. I think sometimes you try to implement too much and then everything is half, right? But I think that if you just really focus and do one thing really well before you move on and then put a success manager in place there, that will really help you streamline that process. And for every organization, it's going to be different.
well, early on, we always had data to help. It was on paper many years ago. But I thought about when I was pre-reading that for the podcast that I don't get paid for this. So let me just be clear. But Elliott Zybel has a really good product that can actually help if you're going to do something in the next 6 months that aligns your doctors on what clinically they believe and let them help them come to the best conclusion over the next 6 months. Would probably be the most valuable thing you could do, because now you're not telling it. Biggest thing with DSO is they try to tell doctors what to do. You can't do it. You just can't. So you have to let them do what they think they should do, but you can ask questions, and the data will help them make better decisions to take care of their patient. Now, I would also add, how do you sell dentistry? Because most people don't have a process to sell dentistry. We have a whole process. How do you sell dentistry to patients? And that training is massive. So there's two things. So one, how do you get better case acceptance by a sales process? Because doctors are sometimes afraid to ask for a glass of water. So you can't, they have a hard time asking for treatment to be done. And you have to have a whole team. So it's communication training on how to sell and data to know how they're doing based upon what they believe. And Elliott has a good product for that. And I honestly don't get paid anything for it. I promise you. No, I might, but no.
Steve?
The question, AJ, is how do you decide, or what would you pass on to get the quickest bump or the next 6 months? Okay. So, I think there's obviously elements of both prior answers for me to build on, because they're both excellent answers. I think the first and foremost is what is our lane? What's our true lane? And what's the next thing I can do that's closest to that lane that enhances it? Because dentistry is this embarrassment of opportunities, right? There's no end to how much you can take on. There is a challenge, though, which is the customer wallet. The customer has a certain amount of money they can spend, and then there's out of money. So you can say, oh my gosh, you need this, you need this, you need this. Okay, that's $20,000. And they go, good, I still have two. And so you find yourself taking on this embarrassment of opportunities, and you're over your skis. They don't have the ability to achieve that. If it's more adjacent to what you're best at, your team's better at it. To Pat's point on selling, right? Your team's better at selling it, explaining the benefits. When it's very far afield, they might go, I don't know exactly what this is. And you're like, well, no one's buying it. It's like, yeah, your confidence isn't very high in this service you're offering, and people aren't going to buy it from you. So I think the closer it is to your already existing area of expertise, the better. To Mary's point, do one at a time, do it right, and just accept the fact you're going to go to a conference and someone's going to be doing something that you aren't doing, and someone else will be doing something you aren't doing. You're like, what's wrong with me? How did I miss this? It's just the nature of this. You'll get there. You'll keep adding things over time, but it's much better to accept that it's a limited focus you can get from people. The closer it is to your existing expertise, the better. And then, doing less better, to Mary's point, do the one, make sure it works, make sure it fits who you are, make sure it's sticking, work out the bugs. Like I was saying earlier, there's going to be a whole bunch of unexpected challenges, and there's always are. And so be ready for that.
Steve, Pat, Mary, thank you so much for your words of wisdom.
Welcome.
Just incredibly grateful for all the pearls of wisdom. I wish I had some of that 17 years ago. A few of your comments hit hard, including the archaeological dig on my calendar. I'm going to make use of that in the future.
Me too. I'm gonna do the archaeological stuff. And somebody needs to build an AI to audit the archaeology of calendars on your team. You already have it.
I mean, no, I'm pretty sure they have it. I've had somebody just analyze their calendar, and they were pretty. I think I went to a seminar and they did that for everybody, and it was embarrassing for everybody.
Well, thank you guys again. This has been a great event. Thanks for tuning into Healthcare 100. If you found today's episode valuable, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. For more insights, resources, and episodes, head on over to healthcare100podcast.com. Until next time, keep scaling smarter. You've got the playbook. Now go build the future of healthcare.